So the age of the ESP is over. And you're probably thinking, what does that mean and what's he on about? ESP, email service provider. Was there an age of an ESP or did he just make that up? Let me start with a question. So I'd like to ask for a show of hands, and I want to just do a quick caveat. Ometria is not an ESP, and I'm going to go into that a little bit more later. But I'd like to ask, does anyone in the room love their ESPs? Sian, you're not allowed to put your hand up. Does anyone love one of the traditional ESPs, so the 100 or so out there, because you've had a great experience setting it up, of getting all the data in there, getting all of your campaigns and your full marketing strategy set up and running exactly as you want it? So show of hands, does anyone love their ESP? So that's luckily what I was expecting. But I'm Ivan, I'm the CEO, one of the co-founders of Ometria, and what I want to talk to you about today is basically why we didn't have a flurry of hands just go up in the air. A couple of weeks ago, we announced that we've just closed a funding round. Looks rather insignificant in comparison after the previous presentation, but what we're really proud about is the people who've chosen to back this company, to back Ometria. Several very well-known venture capital funds, the largest retail group in Portugal, Sone, who are here today, thank you for coming, and some really well-known prominent British retailers. Retailers like Lord Stuart Rose, who's chairman of Ocado, ex-chairman of Marks and Spencer's. Retailers like Alan Parker, who's chairman of Mothercare. These people know retail, they know e-commerce back to front. And when I was doing my presentations, when I was pitching for investment, they'd all ask me the same question. They'd say, what is the problem that Ometria solves? Can you explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old? And I spent a lot of time trying to work out how to answer that question. And in the end, I realized that no, I couldn't. Because the problem that Ometria solves can't be explained to a 5-year-old, unless they happen to be a cutting-edge e-commerce marketer, which is not that unlikely given kids these days. My 11-year-old brother-in-law has like 1 million YouTube subscribers. It's probably more successful than everything we've done here so far. But the reality is, in order to understand a problem, you have to live it. In order to understand the problem that Ometria was created to solve, you have to be a retail marketer. Now, conveniently, I happen to be in a room full of retail marketers, so I'm lucky enough to be able to talk about it with people who I know will understand. So, the expectations of today's consumer are growing exponentially. We've heard this before, right? Well, in fact, we heard this about an hour ago in Ian's talk. And there's probably some smart aleck in the audience right now who's about to point out that the blocks in this slide don't go up linearly, they go up exponentially. I'm looking at you, Sian. Ignore the blocks, the line curves up. The point is, we've heard all of this before, and sure, it's quite a broad, sweeping statement. I want to go into a few actual examples. It took us until the middle of the 19th century to stop needing to light a fire in order to stay warm at night. 200,000 years of human civilization, and we came up with central heating. So at worst, to avoid pneumonia, we had to get a hot water bottle. What is our expectation now, however? Well, in the last couple of years, our expectation has changed. Now we expect our smart meter and smart thermostat to keep us at the perfect temperature throughout the whole year without ever needing to change anything, to keep our bills as low as they possibly can be, and sometimes to even tell us about the upcoming solar eclipse. It took until the middle of the 20th century for us to invent the microwave, saving people everywhere from having to spend an hour cooking their dinner every single evening. Whether or not that's a good thing is debatable, but either way, the microwave changed the world. It took me about 2 years to replace the microwave with Deliveroo as my baseline expectation for how I'm going to eat in the evening. And now, 360 orders later, instead of being grateful for the fact that I quite literally don't need to do anything to eat, I just get annoyed when I forget to push the checkout button. These are just a few examples, and there are so many more out there. There are literally hundreds. In fact, how long do you think it will take before we can just ask for whatever we want, and it will magically appear in front of us? Sounds very Star Trek. Sounds very Star Trek, right? So maybe 100 years, maybe 50 years, maybe a few decades. Well, no, that's actually in 2 months. So 2018 BMWs will have Alexa built in. So if you're stuck in traffic, haven't really got anything to do, you're a bit bored, you can order some new toothbrushes. 2018 Google Android phones will have the Google Assistant built in. In fact, that's out already. My old Pixel, last generation Pixel, already has the Google Assistant. In America, it's now connected with Walmart, it's connected with Target. Next year, it'll be connected to all the biggest stores in the UK. So all you need to do is say, okay, Google, I need a new camera. And that camera will magically appear. And it really will magically appear. Because I don't know if you remember the first time you ever bought anything online, the first time you ever placed an online order. It seemed like a luxury, right? It seemed like a very special experience. You typed a few things in, clicked, and then a couple of days later, a van would arrive and give it to you. Well, not anymore. It felt like a luxury last year when Amazon Prime Now launched here in London, and suddenly you could get stuff within 2 hours. Well, Amazon launched for the first time ever in Singapore 3 weeks ago, and they didn't even bother launching normal Amazon. There was no period of normal Amazon. They went straight from nothing to Amazon Prime Now. People in Singapore went straight from an expectation of nothing, straight to an expectation of a 2-hour delivery time. And it's not just Amazon, of course. It's easy to talk about them. They're just so damn innovative. They keep coming up with these amazing, great things. But Net-a-Porter has same-day delivery. Even Marks & Spencer's now has same-day delivery. So if you really need urgently to get some socks, you don't have to wait for those either. Smart retail marketers know all this, of course. They know how high the expectations of today's consumers are. They know how hard it is to keep up with them. They know how easy it is to put consumers off and how hard it is to get them to come back to them, not go somewhere else. But they are stuck. And they're stuck because the technology that controls their working life is the email service provider. We've heard about the death of emails for decades, and yet to this day, email continues to be the best channel at driving continual engagement from your existing customer base. And so because of that, the main technology of choice for the retail marketer continues to be the ESP. Now, the thing is, no matter how much the ESPs talk about it on their websites or in their marketing materials, the reality is that all ESPs were not built with this as a foundation. All ESPs started with one very simple, basic foundation. They started, and there are a lot of them out there, by the way. They started with an email list. This is the best-known ESP 20 years ago. Anyone who recognizes it will know who it is. All ESPs started with a box at the top into which you would paste a list of email addresses, another box into which you would paste the message that you were going to send, and then a button at the bottom which you would click in order to actually send out that message. This email list was the foundation of all of the ESPs out there. This was the building block on which they built their technology, and everything that has come along since has been simply them adding things on top of this foundation. Because you see, back in the 90s, you really could just send a bunch of emails to the whole list, exactly the same one, and it would work. Customers would buy. There would be huge engagement. Nobody would unsubscribe. But of course, then e-commerce exploded. The exponential growth and expectations kicked off. Retail marketers decided that they needed to be smarter. They needed to be more advanced. They needed to segment. They needed to personalize. They needed to use data. And so, onto the mailing list, onto the list of emails, was stuck a database. Was stuck a table with columns and fields, and suddenly you could do all sorts of magic things. You could put gender in there and make sure that men saw different things to women. You could put the number of orders in there, and you could send something for people who are your VIPs. But that wasn't enough, of course. Retail is a very specific, a very advanced industry. Retail marketers are smart and constantly push the boundaries. They wanted to do more. They wanted to segment on things like buying behavior. But if that's the case, and all you've got is a table of fields, how do you do that? Do you create 100,000 columns, one for each of your SKUs, and then sort of fill in whether somebody had bought or not? And then what about the fact that each of your products has a dozen attributes? How do you market to people who've just bought Navy items, or who have just bought jumpers, who've just bought Navy jumpers, or who've just bought Navy jumpers made by John Smedley, or have looked at but not bought navy jumpers by John Smedley. It just all got too complicated. And so retail marketers had to go right back to giant Excel spreadsheets, to crunching data, importing, exporting, getting business analysts to build reports, getting developers to build segments, trying to sync it all together. The data workflow grew exponentially in line with those expectations. The actual marketing outcome barely progressed. Let me ask another question. Is anyone in the audience currently needing to use an add-on with their ESP? Maybe something to send your triggered emails, like a basket abandonment tool, something to do product recommendations, a module of some kind to do browse abandonment that doesn't quite work, another module to do social media targeting. Quick show of hands, anyone using an add-on? Yeah, so quite a lot of hands going up. That's the other side of this coin. On the one hand, you've got this never-ending data workload. On the other hand, you've got a lack of actual support for the things that you're trying to do, which requires you to get all sorts of other things and bolt it on. So all of this time is spent on repetitive tasks, trying to keep it all together, trying to keep it working, trying to provide a good enough end customer experience. There is a reason for all of this. And the reason is that the requirements you have today, the requirements of the retail market of 2017, were never considered and could never have been considered when the ESPs were starting out, when they're building their platforms. See, building an enterprise software platform is much like building a house. It seems like you can just build some more afterwards, right? You go to an architect and they draw up a second floor extension, and you get some engineers, you get some builders, and then they just sort of build things on top and it all works out. And this is what the ESPs thought. They thought, okay, cool, we're just going to keep doing that. We'll keep building and building and building. The only problem is that their house didn't look like this. Their house looked like this one. Their foundations were simply not right. They couldn't be. There was no knowledge of what we know now. And so sure, can you get an architect to draw up a second floor extension for this house? Of course you can. But we all know what would happen if you add another couple of rooms and a garage into this house right here. No matter how much the ESPs have tried to keep up with the demands of the retail consumer, the requirements of the retail marketer, they simply couldn't. So what would have been the right approach? Well, that was the question that we asked ourselves 4 and a bit years ago when we were starting out. And there was a glaringly obvious answer, a simple answer, to start with the right foundation. And the foundation of today's marketing, especially in retail, a highly complex industry, is the customer. So we knew that the house that we needed to build, the house that retail marketers would love, had to start with a total, a unified, a holistic understanding of that retail customer. Start with this as our foundation, and we knew that we could just keep building and building. Now let me take you through a tangible example of why this concept that I'm talking about, this idea, this difference between the foundation of Ometria and the ESPs is not just some hypothetical idea, why it actually drives a distinct difference to the experience of the consumer and to the experience of the marketer. A couple of months ago, I bought a fridge, not a washing machine, but a fridge, probably from the same retailer, actually, given the example that's about to come. I had an old one for the best part of 10 years, and it broke, and I knew I needed a new one. So one morning on the weekend, I got out my phone, I browsed around, I found one that I thought would work, and added it to basket on my phone. But then because it was a fitted fridge, I got a bit worried. So I got out of bed, I got my measuring tape, I measured up the gap in the kitchen, I went back to my computer and I downloaded the manual for the fridge because I didn't trust the measurements on the website. I compared the measurements, and sure enough, it was in fact okay. So I went back to that retailer's site and bought it right then and there at my desk. A couple of hours later, as I was going through my day, this email arrived. Now, we all know this email. We all know what this email is meant to do. It's meant to remind me to buy something I haven't yet bought. And I can't really blame the retailer for having an abandoned basket campaign set up. It's a pretty important part of a lifecycle marketing strategy. So fair enough from that point of view. But the fact is, I'd already bought the fridge. So as a person, as an individual, as a consumer, in this particular example, I couldn't help feeling a little bit disappointed. Now let's break this down. Let's work out why this happened specifically. Here I was on my mobile phone, browsing around, adding the fridge to basket, That retailer was clearly using a piece of technology that could connect the cookie to an email address. So they now knew the identity of my mobile phone, they knew what I'd done on it, and connected it together with their email system. And then when I hadn't bought the fridge, they sent me an abandoned basket email. So far, so good, right? Well, no, because I had bought the fridge. I just bought it on a different device. I, as a consumer, chose to use the thing that was most convenient for me. It made sense for me because I was sitting at my desk and it was a bigger screen to buy the fridge right then and there. I was the same person. I didn't try and hide myself. There was no mode, incognito mode of my browser. I have the same address. I even used the same email when buying. So how is it that all of this ended up going wrong? How is it that I was left with a disappointing experience? Well, the reason this happened is because I, the consumer, the customer, was not at the center of this technology setup. There was no unified profile of me somewhere that was guiding and informing all the marketing decisions and actions. Not at all. Instead, they were separate systems sending separate messages, each informed by completely disparate and wrong sets of information. And how do I know that? How do I know I'm not just making that up just to give a good example for what we do? Well, actually, I checked. There's a site called BuiltWith. You can go onto BuiltWith and type in the website of any retailer, and it will tell you every piece of technology that they use. So I went and I typed in the website of this retailer, and sure enough, under the ESP was a separate cart abandonment tool. So how should this have been done if it was to be done properly? Well, every single message that was sent to me should have been guided by a single profile, which included every touch point I had ever had with that retailer, across all devices, across all channels. So when I first visited and browsed on my mobile phone, I should have started seeing adverts for that fridge, not just on the same device, but on all of my devices. I'd already clearly shown intent that I was interested in buying a fridge. People don't browse fridges randomly for fun, that I know. And then when I didn't buy it, I should have received an email helping me get over the line, maybe a browse abandonment email based on my behavior. But since I did buy it, since I bought it very quickly afterwards, independent of the fact that it was on another device, I should never have received that email in the first place. Instead, I should have started to get messages guiding me to become a VIP. I'd literally spent £300. I was well on the way. This approach would have left me with a great experience. This is the kind of approach that would have caused me to come back and buy again. This is the ultimate foundation of Ometria. This was the reason we decided to build our technology platform. We wanted to build a platform that started not with the data, not with the messaging, nor even with the email list. We wanted to start with the customer. We wanted to be able to help retailers prevent the kind of experiences that I just talked about and create the kinds that they wanted to create. This is our single customer view from about 4 years ago. This is us right when we were starting out. It was pretty basic. Here's Imogen. Here is every single touch point across that Imogen had with this fake retailer. It is a fake retailer. She had spent, I think, £98,000 with them, so that doesn't happen. Every single touch point across all of her devices, every single visit, every single order. And this is back when AI wasn't even a thing. In 2014, people weren't talking about artificial intelligence. They were just talking about trying to understand the customer. And so we already knew it was important. This is our single customer view today. Now, as you can see, Imogen has been busy. She's now spent £395,000, so the store is doing well. But we've been busy too. What started off as just a collection of data unified into a single profile of Imogen has now moved on into a predictive profile that works out, is she engaged? That works out, what are the products that we should recommend to her? That works out, what is the category she is most likely to want to buy next? Hint, it's outerwear. This profile is the building block of our platform. This profile is the foundation on which we built it. And by building a marketing platform that starts with the customer as the foundation, it means that whenever new data sources become necessary, plugging them in is easy. It's simply how the system is built. Whenever new marketing channels become required, all communication through them is immediately personalized. is immediately unified, because again, that's how the system was built. By starting with the customer, we're able to do things that simply weren't possible before and aren't possible now anywhere else. For example, for each one of them, we can work out, are they likely to be high value? For each one of them, we can work out, are they likely to be at risk? And then maybe if they turn out to be both, we can ensure that a series of extremely relevant messages is delivered, not just across email, but across all the channels I was talking about, to try and save them, to try and get them to come back. And as all of this is happening, our system is measuring what works and what doesn't, and is learning. And not just learning, but presenting that learning back to you, because as marketers, you want to understand why things work. So if we've been able to save 42 at-risk customers in the last month, we can tell you what were the products that led to that happening, or categories or campaigns. What actions did we take that helped you save those 42 customers? So that you can learn and improve and put even better strategies in place to save 43 next time. And this is a simple example. This is just saving at-risk customers. The same thing is happening across the full life cycle, from getting your subscribers to buy for the first time, to getting your one-time buyers to become repeat customers, to getting those repeat customers to become and stay loyal customers. Now, all of this is about one-to-one messaging, hyper-targeted. That's not to say that the newsletter, the thing that ESPs were built for, has no place in today's retail marketing world. No, not at all. People will continue sending mass emails for a long time to come, certainly until James's kids are the main consumers of our generation. But if you are going to send this email, this newsletter, to 1 million people, then at least we will make sure that when it's Imogen opening it, it's outerwear that she sees. See, by building our marketing platform in this way, it means that all of that menial work that I was talking about earlier falls away. There is no more need for data crunching. The data's already in there. That's how the profiles are created. There is no need to try and unify multiple platforms and have people doing that. It all sits in one place, which is built for the requirements of the 2017 retail marketer. It means your time is freed up to focus on the things that matter, on creating your strategies, on improving your strategies, on thinking creatively about the kind of copy and content that you believe will resonate with your customer base. Now, on the outside, this might all look quite similar to an ESP. And it's quite easy for the ESPs to change their website and their marketing materials to talk about the same thing, right? To talk about one-to-one marketing, about personalization, about AI. But changing their foundation is not as simple. And that's why this vision, this problem we solve, this difference between us and the ESPs cannot be explained to a 5-year-old. It can only be explained to a retail marketer who lives this problem every single day. We've only been around for 4 years or so. This is just the beginning of our journey. So why does a company like Lovecrafts, who've used the most advanced, most expensive ESP for many years, switch to us? Why does a company like Lovehoney, who spent many years building their own proprietary in-house marketing platform with a team of engineers, do the same? Is it because we have lots of fancy features that sound good in a sales pitch? I'll be honest, we don't. We've been around for decades less than these companies. We have a lot more left to build. But smart retailers know that fancy features are not what matters. The reason these companies, and they're going to be up on stage later, you'll hear from them. Apparently I feature prominently in the Lovehoney presentation, which I'm slightly worried about. The reason these companies and 100 other retailers, from large multi-channel ones like Moss Bros to fast-growth e-commerce brands like Papier, the reason they choose us is because they believe in this vision. They understand this vision. They know that we are the only technology that has the foundation necessary for ongoing success in today's customer-focused retail marketing world. They know that we are the only technology that will let them stay ahead of the customer expectations and will give them the kind of functionality that they need with their current expectations as well. So this really is the end of the age of the ESP. The ESPs have tried to keep up, but it's getting harder and harder to keep adding things on top of that email list. And at the same time as that's happening, customer expectations are blowing up. And so the question to you becomes simple. What is it that you actually want to do? Do you want to send some emails? Or do you want to truly understand each and every single one of your customers and then do everything possible in order to make them feel special. Because if it's the latter, and you're still using an ESP, then that's a losing battle that you are fighting. But luckily, that is the exact problem that Ometria was created to solve. Thank you. Now, I'm almost done. I'm almost done. We talked about the expectations of the consumer, right? And how fast they're growing. But retail marketers have some pretty high expectations as well. So this is our real-time dashboard, the Ometria real-time dashboard, which we know and love. In fact, quick show of hands, does anyone know and love the real-time dashboard? Anyone in the audience? Okay, excellent, thank you. A lot more hands than the ESPs, so clearly we're doing well. So I want to give you a very small glimpse of the future of the retail marketer. Because what we also have right here is an Amazon Echo. And Alexa, are you connected?
Yes, I am connected to the internet.
I wonder what would happen if I said, Alexa, ask Ometria how many customers are shopping on my site right now.
Of the 26 visitors on your website, 2 are shopping right now.
Alexa, ask Ometria, what are they looking at?
The Ometria post-purchase campaign has driven 2 orders in the last hour.
Alexa, ask Ometria what they are looking at.
The top product being browsed right now is Gravel Classic Blouse Shirt. 4 visitors are looking at it. You should probably order some more of them.
I think we probably should. And I guess lastly, and most importantly, Alexa, ask Ometria how much money I made today.
You have made 10,039 euros today. Don't worry. Take a day off. I've got this.
And that is the future of the retail marketer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very impressive. Actually, I should remind you about that dinosaur slide, because a few other things collapsed at the end of that meteorite landing.
Yes.
Yeah, it wasn't just the dinosaurs, but anyway. Questions for Ivan from the floor? I'm sure there are some questions out there somewhere. Yes.
In your opinion, what's caused the change in customer expectations?
In my opinion, what's caused the change in customer expectations? Well, I guess there's a few sides to that. There's a couple of innovators that have raised the bar beyond everyone else. So if you think about how, how our mind works, we only remember the things that are special. So either they're really, really good special, a bit like you were saying, or really, really bad special. We don't really tend to remember the things in the middle. We just feel that they're not quite right. So I guess on the one side, a few innovators have raised the bar of what we're expecting, whether that's 90-minute delivery or whether that's not having to do anything to get food. And now every single time we have any other kind of experience, we're immediately comparing it to that. On the other hand, certainly the ability to be able to identify people and therefore create a profile and creative understanding, that's something that simply wasn't possible before the e-commerce world, right? So now we have the ability to understand who people are and what they want, and that's something that's brand new.
How do you think the impact of GDPR is going to affect how we have to work to get the buy-in from the customer in a more agile way than we're currently doing?
I think there's going to be a couple of stages. I think we're in a phase right now where people don't know about data privacy and data security. So we read about breaches, Yahoo loses 3 billion contact records and so on, and we get very scared and we don't want to give our data to any companies, and therefore the governments are like, oh God, we've got to protect the consumer, so let's just put everything in place to prevent companies from being able to do anything with data. I think the expectations part of what I've been talking about is going to flip it on its head. I think in a couple of years' time, companies will be so restricted from using this data that consumers will be saying, no, please just use it to provide us with a better experience. We're tired of not having the best experiences everywhere. And I think there's going to be a reversal of policy. It's never going to be a free-for-all. You're never going to be able to sell customer data. It's always going to be ours. But certainly the really stringent constraints that we're seeing now are a factor of our time and this unknown, this uncertainty, this irrational fear. Once that's sorted, I genuinely believe that the consumers will push through a requirement for all companies to use their data in order to provide a better experience.
I guess there's quite a bit of an attitude with some really successful retailers who have grown organically and they have really good sales. And there's an attitude that sort of why fix what's not broken, especially when I'm talking about the end of the ESP. So a lot of retailers will be seeing a lot of successes from their ESP. So what would your advice be to retailers who, maybe in the lower ranks want to move away from it and do smarter stuff, but actually building the case to the business owners who ultimately see profitability? What would you say is your advice to that? And what is the future for retailers in cracking that to start doing the smarter stuff?
I guess the scary thing in retail is that things go well until they don't, right? Like Nasty Girl is the best, most successful brand ever until the next day it's out of business. And then the same thing across everything, Jaeger and Fab.com and so on. So it's not a case of how you build a business case about the fact that this will be better than the alternative. It's, I guess, more a case of understanding that the consumers don't see any other alternative, and the consumers now expect you to be able to provide this kind of experience, and therefore this technology is not something you may or may not choose to invest in. It's something that you simply have to do if you expect to still be around in 5-10 years. Explaining that is not often easy. It took me a while to make sure I could come up with the right examples, but we know that this is true. We know that this is the case, and we see the companies doing the sort of deep personalization that creates these specific experiences. We see that they are the ones that are growing the quickest. So yeah, I guess it's more of a case of explaining that this is not something to wait for. This is something that needs to be done right now, and there is no alternative.